Live from New Delhi, you're watching DD India Newshour, India's voice to the world. I'm Shubhendu Ghosh. Coming up in the next hour, Prime Minister Narendra Modi participates in Somnath Amrit Mahotsav in Gujarat. Prime Minister Modi urges citizens to conserve fuel and other resources in the face of global economic uncertainty, calls it test of collective responsibility. West Asia remains on the edge as US President Donald Trump calls Iran's response to peace initiative totally unacceptable. Political crisis deepens for Britain's ruling Labour Party after local election losses. Prime Minister Starmer promises bold actions as leadership threat mounts. WHO says 7 cases of hantavirus confirmed from cruise ship. 2 Indian crew members aboard the ship are healthy and asymptomatic. As India braces for the ripple effects of the deepening West Asia conflict, Prime Minister Narendra Modi has made direct appeal to the nation, calling it test of collective responsibility. He urged citizens to adopt restraint, conserve resources and strengthen economic resilience in the face of global uncertainty. More in this report.
As the West Asia conflict continues to impact global markets and energy supplies, India is moving swiftly to shield its citizens from economic turbulence. Prime Minister Narendra Modi has now appealed to the nation to collectively contribute towards conserving resources and strengthening economic stability. Amid rising concerns over the global energy crisis, PM Modi called for reducing petrol and diesel consumption by increasingly using public transport, carpooling and electric vehicles.
एक बड़ा संकल्प है पेट्रोल डीजल का संयम से इस्तेमाल करना। साथियों, हमें पेट्रोल डीजल का उपयोग कम करना होगा। शहरों में जहां मेट्रो है, वहां हम तय करें कि हम मेट्रो का ही उपयोग करेंगे। ज्यादा से ज्यादा मेट्रो में ही जाएंगे। अगर कार में ही जाना जरूरी है, तो फिर कारपूल करने का प्रयास करें।
Stressing the need for national participation during challenging global times. Besides petrol, Prime Minister also urged citizens to reduce unnecessary consumption and adopt sustainable practices in daily life. In his appeal, PM Modi called for reviving COVID-era efficiency measures in national interest. Work from home wherever feasible, online conferences and virtual meetings, help conserve India's foreign exchange reserves, avoid unnecessary foreign travel, overseas vacations and destination weddings, promote domestic tourism and celebrations within India, avoid non-essential gold purchases for 1 year to reduce pressure on forex outflows, prioritize made in India and locally manufactured products, including daily use items like shoes, bags and accessories, reduce edible oil consumption for both economic and health benefits, reduce chemical fertilizer usage by 50%. Prime Minister's appeal has found resonance among citizens, many describing it as a timely call for responsible living and economic patriotism.
He has given a message to entire country that people should use vehicles as little as possible and only when necessary.
What he said is absolutely right. When the country faces a shortage of something, especially something that has to be imported, we should conserve it and use it less.
At a time when the world is witnessing uncertainty and disruption, India's message is one of discipline, self-reliance and collective responsibility. Bureau Report, DD India.
In other news, West Asia remains on the edge. US President Donald Trump has rejected Iran's response to a proposed peace initiative, calling it totally unacceptable. Iran has called for an end to regional hostilities. UN has warned of serious global food security risks if disruptions continue in the Strait of Hormuz. DD India's Nishcha Roy gets us more.
West Asia stands at a dangerous crossroad. US President Donald Trump on Sunday rejected Iran's response to a proposed American peace initiative, reducing hopes of an early end to the conflict now in its 10th week. President Trump has called Iran's counter-proposal totally unacceptable and accused Tehran of decades of deception, while also criticizing former US President Barack Obama's Iran policy. Trump wrote on Truth Social, "I've just read the response from Iran's so-called representatives. I don't like it, totally unacceptable." In Tel Aviv, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has said that Iran's enriched uranium stockpile must be removed before the conflict can be considered over, signaling Israel's hardline position.
I think it accomplished a great deal, but it's not over because there's still nuclear material, enriched uranium that has to be taken out of Iran. There's still enrichment sites that have to be dismantled. There are still proxies that Iran supports. There are ballistic missiles that they still want to produce. Now, we've degraded a lot of it, but all of that is still there, and there's work to be done.
Iran has proposed ending hostilities across all fronts, including Lebanon, and has stressed the importance of securing regional shipping routes. Iran's foreign ministry said it had called for an end to the war across the region and the release of frozen assets abroad in its response to the latest US proposal. "We did not demand any concessions. The only thing we demanded was Iran's legitimate rights," said ministry spokesman Ismail Baghei in a weekly press briefing. He said Iran's demands included an end to the war in the region, ending the US naval blockade, and the release of assets belonging to the Iranian people, which have for years been unjustly trapped in foreign banks. Iran's supreme leader, Mojtaba Khamenei, has issued fresh directives for the continuation of military operations and stronger action against adversaries. Meanwhile, United Nations has warned that tens of millions of people will face hunger and starvation if fertilizers are not soon allowed through the Strait of Hormuz.
We have a few weeks ahead of us to prevent what will likely be a massive humanitarian crisis. We may be witnessing a crisis that will force 45 million more people into hunger and starvation.
Amid fears of a prolonged conflict, global oil prices surged on Monday. Brent crude crossed $103 a barrel, while US crude prices also rose sharply. With energy security, regional stability, and global trade at stake, the developments in the region are expected to remain a key focus of international attention in the days ahead. Nishcha Roy's report for DD India.
Moving on, Prime Minister Narendra Modi took part in Somnath Amrit Mahotsav in Gujarat. On the occasion, Prime Minister hailed the temple's reconstruction, a milestone in India's civilizational journey. Here's more.
ऐसा लग रहा है जैसे ये सृष्टि एक साथ बोल रही है, जय सोमनाथ, जय जय सोमनाथ.
The occasion of Prime Minister Narendra Modi's Mahapuja and rituals at the Somnath temple held to commemorate the 75th anniversary of the inauguration of the reconstructed temple. Amid the chanting of Vedic hymns, the Mahapuja proclaimed India's march forward with confidence and self-belief. Reflecting on India's vast cultural inheritance, the Prime Minister noted that cultural sites have been the nation's identity for thousands of years. On this occasion, he also recalled the nuclear tests conducted in 1998. He said that the Pokhran 2 nuclear tests were named Operation Shakti because India's traditions have long been associated with the worship of Shiva and Shakti.
उस समय पूरी दुनिया का दबाव भारत पर था, लेकिन अटल जी के नेतृत्व में बीजेपी सरकार ने दिखाया था कि हमारे लिए राष्ट्र प्रथम है। दुनिया की कोई ताकत भारत को झुका नहीं सकती।
Expressing concern about contemporary challenges, the Prime Minister stated that divisive forces remain influential even today. He cited recent examples of opposition to nationally significant cultural projects. The Prime Minister called for vigilance against such divisive thinking.
जब नई पीढ़ियां अपने इतिहास, अपनी आस्था और अपने सांस्कृतिक मूल्यों से जुड़ती है, तब राष्ट्र का आत्मबल और मजबूत होता है। आज भारत जिस आत्मविश्वास के साथ आगे बढ़ रहा है, उसमें हमारी सांस्कृतिक निरंतरता की भी बहुत बड़ी भूमिका है। आधुनिकता हो या विरासत हो, भारत में इसे कोई अलग नहीं कर सकता।
Expanding the circle of reverence, PM named numerous other great personalities like Veer Hamirji Gohil and Ahilyabai Holkar, who dedicated themselves to Somnath's service. The Prime Minister spoke of witnessing millennia of spiritual consciousness that has imparted lessons of universal welfare. Prime Minister Narendra Modi released a commemorative postage stamp and a special 75 rupees coin on the occasion of Somnath Amrut Mahotsav. With bureau inputs, Bhavna Nair and Ashwini Mishra's report for DD India from Somnath, Gujarat.
In other news, international community remains on alert over hantavirus outbreak aboard Dutch and medical observation. 2 Indian crew members aboard are safe and asymptomatic, even as several countries report confirmed infections and 3 deaths linked to the outbreak. DD India's Rupa Kumar Jha brings us this detail.
This Dutch MV Hondius cruise ship has been at the center of an international health alert ever since a hantavirus outbreak occurred on the ship. Authorities in Spain confirmed that 94 passengers and crew members from 19 countries have been evacuated from the vessel anchored near Tenerife in the Canary Islands. The final 2 flights are expected to depart on Monday.
94 people of 19 nationalities have disembarked. On 7 of the flights, there were 8 nationalities. And on one of the flights, the Netherlands one, there were 11 nationalities. For tomorrow at 7, the ship will refuel. Refueling will take a few hours, followed by an hour of provisioning. Later in the afternoon, there are still 2 flights scheduled. The Australia flight carrying 6 people and the Netherlands flight, which is expected to carry 18 people.
The Indian embassy in Spain said 2 Indian crew members aboard the ship are healthy and asymptomatic. The embassy added that both have been evacuated to the Netherlands under quarantine protocols and that Indian officials are closely monitoring the situation. Several countries, including Britain, Germany, and Greece, have also placed returning passengers under isolation and observation. British passengers are being isolated at a hospital near Liverpool, while Germany and Greece transferred evacuees to dedicated quarantine facilities. The United States confirmed that 1 repatriated American tested mildly positive for the Andes strain of hantavirus, while another showed mild symptoms. Both were transported in biocontainment units to specialized medical facilities in Nebraska for monitoring and treatment. World Health Organization teams screened passengers and crew for symptoms and exposure and has recommended quarantine periods of up to 42 days for all on board.
We've been in contact with epidemiologists on the ship who have been assessing the passengers and crew to make sure that everyone is not having any symptoms and that they are and trying to understand how close their risk, their exposure was to any of the sick individuals.
So far, Netherlands has confirmed 3 cases, including 2 deaths. Britain has 3 cases with no deaths reported. Germany has 1 case confirmed, accounting for 1 of the 3 deaths on the ship. Switzerland, meanwhile, has reported one confirmed case with no deaths. France has one confirmed case with no deaths. And United States has reported one mildly PCR positive case and one person with mild symptoms under monitoring. People across the globe are alert and watch cautiously the developments related to hantavirus. Rupak Kumar Jha's report for DD India.
And still to come on DD India Newshour. Thailand's former Prime Minister Thaksin Shinawatra released from prison after 8 months behind bars. Philippine Vice President Sara Duterte is impeached. And French President Macron pushes for investment in Africa.
Geopolitics and trade deals. Economic challenges amid development. Hard work and the path to prosperity. It's the economy always. Between walkers, money is what money does and says. Supply creates its own demand. Between the bulls pulls and bears tears. When supply chains globalization and India rises to the podium. We'll get you centered with the economic brief at 8 p.m. every Thursday on DD India.
You're watching DD India Newshour. I'm Shubhendu Ghosh. Britain's Prime Minister Keir Starmer is facing mounting pressure within his own Labour Party after heavy losses in local elections across England. While Starmer has vowed to rebuild trust through youth employment and stronger ties with Europe, critics inside the party are openly demanding leadership change amid growing political uncertainty. Take a look.
Political tensions have intensified within Britain's ruling Labour Party after local election losses. Amid mounting criticism, Prime Minister Keir Starmer on Monday vowed to prove his doubters wrong as he sought to contain the growing threat to his leadership.
I want to make a better offer for our young people. Restore that hope, that freedom, that sense of possibility. And so I want an ambitious youth experience scheme to be at the heart of our new arrangement with the EU, so that our young people can work and study and live in Europe, a symbol of a stronger relationship and a fairer future with our closest allies. That is the Labour choice.
Starmer also outlined plans to rebuild Britain's relationship with Europe, promising a guaranteed offer of a job, training or work placement for every young person that British steel could soon be brought under public ownership.
And so at the next EU summit, I will set a new direction for Britain. The last government was defined by breaking our relationship with Europe. This Labour government will be defined by rebuilding our relationship with Europe, so we will go much further on our investment in apprenticeships, in technical excellence colleges, in special educational needs. We will make sure that every young person struggling to find a job will get a guaranteed offer of a job, training or work placement.
Labour lost nearly 1,400 councillors and control of 33 councils across England, while the populist Reform UK party made significant gains by winning nearly 1,500 seats. Following the setback, Labour MP Catherine West urged cabinet ministers to move quickly to replace Starmer.
I will be asking everybody in the Parliamentary Labour Party to put a name against my name. I need 80 names. I've got 70 something at the moment, because we need to get this ball rolling. But my preferred option is for the Cabinet to do a reshuffle within itself, where there's plenty of talent, and for Keir to be given a different role, which he might enjoy, perhaps an international role.
Earlier, UK PM faced criticism over appointment of former US Ambassador Peter Mandelson. On April 28, 2026, UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer survived a crucial parliamentary vote regarding his handling of Peter Mandelson's appointment as US Ambassador. Mandelson was fired by Starmer last September after his relationship with Jeffrey Epstein was found to be deeper than previously known. Bureau Report, DD India.
Amid repeated criticism of NATO by US President Donald Trump, Canadian Foreign Minister Anita Anand has said the military alliance remains crucial for global security. Anand reaffirmed Canada's commitment to the alliance, saying NATO continues to play a key role in collective defence and maintaining stability across the Western world.
But to be clear, NATO as a defensive alliance committed to collective security could never be more important than it is today. We are seeing real threats from Russia moving further and further towards the North Pole, for example. Therefore, Arctic security could not be more important, not just from a Canadian standpoint, but from the standpoint of the North Atlantic Treaty Organization.
French President Emmanuel Macron on Monday announced 23 billion euros of investment for Africa during a major summit on the future of the continent in Kenya on Monday. The investments include 14 billion euros in private and public investments by French entities, also 9 billion euros by African investors. Speaking at the University of Nairobi, Macron stressed on the need for partnerships focused on growth, trade and development. Macron also defended Europe's role on the continent, saying France and other European powers were not the predators of the century, while calling for reforms in international finance and stronger governance across Africa. The summit comes as France seeks to rebuild its influence across Africa following strained ties and military withdrawals from several West African nations. European foreign ministers gathered in Brussels on Monday for a meeting of the Foreign Affairs Council with ongoing Russia-Ukraine conflict high on agenda. The gathering follows remarks by EU Foreign Policy Chief Kaja Kallas, who rejected Russian President Putin's proposal to appoint former German Chancellor Gerhard Schröder as a mediator between Moscow and Europe. Speaking to reporters ahead of the talks, Kallas stressed that allowing Russia to appoint a negotiator on behalf of the EU would not be wise.
First, if we give the right to Russia to appoint a negotiator on our behalf, that would not be very wise. And second, I think Gerhard Schröder has been the high-level lobbyist for Russian state-owned companies. So it's clear why Putin wants him to be the person, so that actually, he would be sitting on both sides of the table.
German Defense Minister Boris Pistorius met his Ukrainian counterpart Mikhailo Fedorov in Kiev to discuss air defense, drone warfare and continued military support for Ukraine. Fedorov said Germany has begun funding a major Patriot missile contract with deliveries expected next year and has also allocated support for Ukraine's drone assault units.
Germany has also allocated the first funds to support drone assault units. This is the use of a new doctrine of warfare to conduct certain offensive and defensive operations. It involves using drones and assault infantry units to achieve specific results. And I would like to thank you separately for this, because it is about how Ukraine is changing the rules of the game on the battlefield.
And German Defense Minister reaffirmed Germany's continued support, saying Ukrainian drone operations had repeatedly helped counter Russian advances and regain territory.
Yes, Ukraine is successfully defending itself against the Russian attack, and that is also due to the new so-called drone assault regiments that flew by surprise and won back territories. We have already provided financial support for this and will continue to do so.
Philippine lawmakers voted overwhelmingly on Monday to impeach Vice President Sara Duterte, paving the way for a Senate trial that could affect her 2028 presidential ambitions. Duterte faces allegations of misusing public funds, accumulating unexplained wealth, and threatening Ferdinand Marcos Jr., his wife, and a former House Speaker. Charges that she denies. The impeachment complaint, backed by activists, lawyers, and religious groups, secures support from 255 lawmakers, far exceeding the required threshold. The Senate will now hold trial where conviction could remove Duterte from the office and ban her from politics. And Philippine Senator Ronald De La Rosa has been placed under Senate protective custody after a brief standoff with law enforcement agents amid reports of possible arrest warrant linked to war on drugs crackdown. De La Rosa, who served as police chief under former President Rodrigo Duterte, is accused by International Criminal Court prosecutors of involvement in thousands of killings during the anti-narcotics campaign, while Duterte is already in ICC custody in The Hague, facing crimes against humanity charges. De La Rosa has denied any wrongdoing. Thailand's former Prime Minister Thaksin Shinawatra was released from prison on Monday after about 8 months behind bars, following a court ruling that deemed that he had wrongfully stayed in hospital to avoid jail time. Hundreds of supporters who had thronged outside the Bangkok's Klong Pem Central Prison greeted him on his release, having served about two-thirds of his sentence before being paroled. After 15 years in self-exile, Thaksin returned to Thailand in 2023 to face an 8-year sentence for conflicts of interest and abuse of power, while Prime Minister from 2001 to 2006 that had been commuted to 1 year by the King. Thai police have announced the country's biggest ivory seizure in a decade, arresting 9 people accused of trying to sell smuggled African elephant tusks through Facebook. Authorities seized around 250 kilograms of ivory, valued at nearly $300,000, during raids carried out across 7 provinces in Thailand. Police said ivory had been smuggled from Africa by ship and was being sold through a private social media group. The seized items included tusk fragments, jewelry, prayer beads and knife handles, with Thai and Vietnamese buyers reportedly targeted. Nepal's federal parliament held a joint session on Monday where President Ramchandra Paudel presented the government's policy and program for the fiscal 2026-27. The government has proposed initiating the process for constitutional amendment in the upcoming fiscal, with task force led by political advisor Asim Shah currently gathering suggestions from political parties and experts across sectors. Speaking at CII Annual Business Summit, Union Railways Minister Ashwani Vaishnav highlighted the massive expansion of India's railway network over the past decade, stating that 36,000 kilometers of new tracks have been laid and 49,000 kilometers electrified, surpassing the entire rail network of Germany.
Railway capex has increased from about 66,000 crore a few years ago to about 2,72,000 crores in the last financial year, and the capacity of the entire industry, the capacity of the railway department to execute projects at this scale has also grown simultaneously. For example, in the last financial year, the entire capex was spent practically in the first week of March itself. Not up to 31st March, but practically by the last week of February, it was like 98 point some percentage, and then we had to, in a sense, stop that because we have to complete the entire year. So we had to practically stop spending. That is the kind of pace which has started happening in our country.
Speaking at the CII Annual Business Summit, Principal Secretary to Prime Minister Shaktikanta Das has strongly hailed the Indian economy as a safe anchor offering stability, predictability and long-term growth amidst global volatility.
India has not only absorbed successive disruptions since the COVID-19 pandemic, but repeatedly converted every adversity into opportunity and momentum. The Indian economy has delivered an average annual GDP growth of about 7.4% between the years 22-23 and 25-26, making it the fastest growing major economy during that period. What is even more striking is that this growth is anchored not in over-leveraging, not in overspending, not in loosening the financial system, but this is anchored in macroeconomic stability, that is contained inflation, prudent fiscal consolidation, a resilient financial system, and strong domestic demand.
Still to come on DD India Newshour. We'll talk about the implications of the stalled negotiations between the United States and Iran. Also, India-Cambodia hold joint military exercise.
Can the US launch a bombing campaign against Iran? The Philippines vessel suffered structural damage. The saga of child sexual abuse is the United States China's debt trap strategy. Truth is stranger than fiction. But sometimes hard to uncover. Trust us to tell the truth, unadulterated and pure, of every story that matters to you. You read between the lines, cut the clutter, and connect the dots to get you the full picture. Watch Connecting the Dots at these times with me, only on DD India.
Welcome back. You're watching DD India Newshour. I'm Shubhendu Ghosh. We return to our top story on the developments in the US-Iran conflict. Joining me is Ambassador Sanjay Bhattacharya, Foreign Affairs expert and former Secretary MEA. Good evening and welcome, Ambassador Bhattacharya. Now, with US-Iran negotiations stalling again, what are the implications for the fragile peace in West Asia?
Well, this negotiation has been stalled for quite some time. Although they've managed to have some kind of a ceasefire, but they also have a blockade over there in the Straits of Hormuz, which is going back and forth. What this means is very little between the two of them, because the nuclear issue, which is the key fundamental objection that the Americans have to the Iranian position, is something that the rest of the global community is not quite sure about. And in any case, that's something that the IAEA had not quite endorsed. But what it means is that it has an impact on the regional and global economy in terms of economic uncertainty, energy security, and in terms of the implications that it could have on the growth potential for the economies around. So the effect is now being felt on the rest of us.
Ambassador, it appears that the key sticking point now is Iran's demand for sovereignty over the Strait of Hormuz. Can you share what was the status quo before this conflict started and what is Iran seeking now?
Well, before this conflict started, the Strait of Hormuz was declared as international waterway and there was freedom of passage. And this was slightly in variance, if I may add, with the Iranian position at the UNCLOS, which they had acceded, as you know. And in that, they had actually said that some of the customary rights could be curtailed in times of crises, like a war, and therefore certain countries could be treated as adversaries. So way back in the 1980s, Iran had already pointed this out, but that is not fully tenable in terms of international law and what UNCLOS actually works for. So in some ways, while the Iranians had made a point, it was not acceptable to the global community. But the fact is that before this war broke out, there was really no problem of transit to the Strait of Hormuz. Right. There were, of course, Iranian contentions that if there was a conflict, then they would actually mine the Straits of Hormuz. And if you recall, at that point of time, the principal concern had really come from the Saudis at that point, and they had said that that might be something that might provoke them to take action. But that was decades ago when this discussion had taken place. And in this instance, as you know, the Saudis have not retaliated. But the Americans and the Israelis are the ones who have taken up the cudgels on this particular front.
Ambassador, very limited detail has come out as far as the reasons for the latest disagreements are concerned. But there appears to be no mention of the nuclear question in the latest exchanges. Could it mean that that particular issue, for now, may be sorted between the adversaries?
I think from what I have gathered, there are two issues, and one of them is the nuclear issue. The other one is, of course, the one that you mentioned, and that's the one that was not an issue between the Americans and the Iranians, but is a consequence of the war. And that's, of course, is the biggest issue for the rest of us.
Right. And given the disproportionate power balance between the United States and Iran, it'd be interesting to understand what is working as a hedge for Iran as it is continuing to invest in negotiations with United States.
Well, Iran's options are quite limited in the military context. Although it has put up a fairly, strong defense during this particular conflict with Israel and the United States. But it really has had a fairly high level of decimation of its various infrastructural facilities, of its capabilities in the military field. And so it has obviously suffered a very deep blow. And so Iran's strategy from the outset was to prolong negotiations and to continue having negotiations rather than get into this conflict situation. And so today, when they find that, I would suppose, that their retaliation capacity in terms of the drones or the missiles in particular would be quite limited, they would wish to have an extension of this period where they can utilize this lull, so to say.
How would Israel and Prime Minister Netanyahu be looking at these developments, the stalling of talks? The latest that has come out from him is that he refers to a certain unfinished business in Iran as far as their capabilities are concerned.
Well, I have always maintained that this was really an unfortunate war in which the United States and the Israelis should not have embarked because it has not been justified in terms of international law. However, given that it has taken place, I would place much greater priority on diplomatic efforts to bring an end to this war. And I think that's what, there were several interlocutors on the Indian side, also officials who have actually voiced this particular aspect. I think the expansion of the war, because if you do recall, there was an expansion of the war from the Israel-Palestine issue going into the Lebanon, Syria, Iraq, and now into Iran. So I think this is something that needs to stop because regional stability is extremely important, and that lack of regional stability is affecting everyone else, including us.
Ambassador, I want to explore a long shot. Donald Trump heads to China this week. Now, could the talks in Beijing have a bearing on what happens next in West Asia?
Well, there are two aspects to the role of Pakistan in this particular exercise. One, of course, is that there is a certain fondness that Mr. Trump seems to have for Field Marshal in Pakistan. But the other is that China views Pakistan as one of its very strong allies. And therefore, you would also recall that the Pakistani foreign minister had traveled to Beijing to report on the developments when the first round of so-called mediation or go-between had come about. And so the Chinese have actually been playing a reasonably central role in this particular effort, not only to assess, not only to kind of bring about a ceasefire, but also to assess the U.S. capabilities. And this is something that has become more evident over a period of time. The Chinese, as you know, have taken a very strong position in condemning these attacks. And even in the earlier instance, when the Israelis were involved with the Palestinians and with some of its other neighbors, the Chinese had come out much more strongly than many others. So the Chinese have a big stake in this, and they see if there is a certain vacuum that is coming about, not that I see it happening right now, but if there is, then they would wish to play a deeper role.
And Ambassador, finally, if you talk about the impact of these stalled talks on the region and the world, the disruptions in global energy supply chain is likely to continue. What is going to be the bearing for countries like India, who import most of their crude? Prime Minister Modi, of course, made those very special seven appeals talking about conserving resources in the time of crisis.
So at a time when the crisis broke out and there was no great clarity on how long it would be, but there was expectation, at least a hope, that it would not last for too long, you could look into issues like reserves, diversification of sources, some form of transformation in the energy basket and deal with it. But if this is something that's going to continue for long, and India being one in which being a country where the fossil fuels are still a very dominant part of our calculus, it is going to have an impact. So I think the clear strategy at this point of time will be, of course, to go about and see as much of diversification as is possible. And as you know, we've already been going out into the African continent, into Latin America, apart from our traditional sources, and some of the more recent ones from Russia and others. But I think some of the things that we will have to look at much more actively is to go the old way, which is to go into coal and see if we can do some more in that particular area. Because as you know, the hydro reserves at this point of time in the year are not significantly, cannot be scaled up at this point of time. And so perhaps coal and gas would be some of those options, and the government is looking at that. The other is whether we can look at some kind of prolonging the mix of fuel that we do, and some of that has been tried out, as you know, the ethanol kind of compositions. But this is really the last stage effort, and it will begin to pinch after a while.
Right. On that note, Ambassador Sanjay Bhattacharya, many thanks for joining us on DD India Newshour. Moving on, Prime Minister Narendra Modi inaugurated Sardar Dham Hostel in Vadodara, Gujarat. The new facility, officially named Dr. Dushyant and Daksha Patel Complex, was built at an estimated cost of about 150 crore rupees to support students from the Patidar community. The hostel provides accommodation for 2,000 students, especially 1,000 boys and 1,000 girls in separate buildings. The complex includes central dining hall, a library, a 1,000-seat auditorium, and an e-library that can seat 400 students. Prime Minister also visited various facilities at the Sardar Dham complex, including the reception area, civil amenities, dining area, and e-library. Prime Minister Modi, while addressing a gathering in Vadodara, Gujarat, highlighted the key features of national education policy.
आज शिक्षा के क्षेत्र में जमीनी हकीकतों के आधार पर काम हो रहा है। राष्ट्रीय शिक्षा नीति इसका बहुत बड़ा उदाहरण है। आज युवाओं की राह से रोड़े हटाए जा रहे हैं। भाषा के आधार पर होने वाला भेदभाव खत्म हो रहा है। आज जोर केवल किताबों और डिग्रियों पर नहीं है, स्किल डेवलपमेंट और इनोवेशन को पढ़ाई का हिस्सा बनाया गया है।
Prime Minister also said government will continue efforts to boost women's participation across sectors, including politics.
पहले कितने ही क्षेत्रों में बेटियों के लिए दरवाजे ही बंद होते थे। आज उन्हीं सेक्टर्स में बेटियां लीडरशिप रोल में सामने आ रही हैं। आज नेशनल डिफेंस एकेडमी में महिला कैडेट्स ट्रेनिंग ले रही है। हमारी बेटियां फाइटर पायलट बन रही है। राजनीति में भी महिलाओं की भागीदारी बढ़ाने के लिए लगातार प्रयास हो रहा है। नारी शक्ति वंदन संशोधन के जरिए हमने इसके लिए एक और प्रयास किया था। राजनीतिक कारणों से वो पास नहीं हो पाया, लेकिन मैं आपको आश्वस्त करूंगा, देश भर की महिलाओं को आश्वस्त करूंगा, हम इस दिशा में लगातार प्रयास करते रहेंगे।
The second edition of India-Cambodia joint military exercise is currently underway in Cambodia's Kampong Spoo province, bringing together troops from the Indian Army and the Royal Cambodian Army. The exercise focuses on enhancing interoperability and coordination during United Nations peacekeeping and counter-terror operations in semi-urban environments. The joint drills include firing practice, urban warfare, tactical drone operations, sniper training, mortar exercises, combat, first aid and disaster relief operations. Still to come on DD India Newshour. We bring you updates from France on the 79th Cannes Film Festival.
Welcome to Jaipur.
Welcome back. You're watching DD India Newshour. I'm Shubhendu Ghosh. 79th Cannes Film Festival is set to start from 12th of May in Cannes, in southern France. It is one of the world's most prestigious cinematic showcases, where authors, stars and industry professionals converge on the French Riviera to celebrate and premiere films from across the world. The festival features a competitive slate of international films vying for the coveted Palme d'Or, alongside screenings in sections like Uncertain, Regard and special screenings. Also honors cinema legends with honorary awards. This year's edition is notable for its diverse selection of films, a globally representative jury led by South Korean director Park Chan-wook, and a continued emphasis on auteur cinema. DD India's Munmun Bhattacharya gets us more from Cannes.
Behind me is the iconic staircase leading up to the Palais des Festivals, where most of the world's cinema will be screened at the Cannes Film Festival. The red carpet is going to be rolled out right here, and stars from around the world will walk down the red carpet ahead of the premieres of their films. This is one of the most photographed locations in cinema and acts as a bridge between fashion outside and cinema inside.
And DD India correspondent Munmun Bhattacharya is at the Cannes Film Festival. Munmun, what is the global buzz around Cannes Film Festival this year?
Right, it is a 12-day festival. It begins on 12th May and concludes on 23rd May. On the opening day, a lot of eyes will be on the red carpet, where celebrities from around the world will be walking down to go up the staircase and watch various movies which are going to be shown in Palais des Festivals, which is the main building where most of the world cinema is screened during the festival. The opening film is a French period comedy. It is The Electric Kiss by French director Salvadori, and that is going to be screened on the 12th of May. Then the closing will be on the 23rd of May. Euless is a French comedy drama that is going to be screened. That is also by a French director, and that will be screened on the final day. As far as honorary Palm d'Ors are concerned, then every year we see that some celebrities who have made major contributions like Lifetime Achievement Award, this is presented every year, and this time, of course, it is going to be presented to Peter Jackson, who is a New Zealand filmmaker who is known for Lord of the Rings trilogy and Hobbit trilogy. And of course, there is Barbara Streisand, the American multi-hyphenate artist, who is also going to be felicitated and honored with an honorary Palme d'Or for her contribution to cinema and the arts. But this time there is more focus on audio-driven artistic movies.
And how is India represented at the Cannes Film Festival and market this time?
There is decent presence of Indian films at the Cannes Film Festival this year. In the Cannes Classic section, Amma Aryan, which is a 1986 cult Malayalam film, is going to be screened. This is the 5th consecutive year when a restored Indian classic is being screened at the Cannes Film Festival after films like Thamp, Ishanu, Arinyar Din Ratri, etc. Having said that, in the last NF section, we are seeing that The Shadows of the Moonless Nights, a film that has been made by a film student who was in FTII Pune when she made this film. Meher Mehrotra is her name. This is a Punjabi language film which is around the struggles of a factory night worker who is navigating urban life is based on, and this film has been largely shot in Pune. As far as the other aspects of India's representation is concerned, then Payal Kapadia, the acclaimed Indian filmmaker who had won the Grand Prix, which is the second most prestigious award at the Cannes Film Festival, is the chair of the Cannes Critics Week. And she had, of course, won the Grand Prix a couple of years back, 2 years back here at the festival. And then at the Marshadu film, the youngest Indian director is going to screen her film. This is a debut in feature filmmaking, and her film is called September 21. It is around the challenges, both human and emotional, of Alzheimer's disease and caretaking.
Munmun, have a good time at Cannes Festival, and thank you for joining us with those updates. In sports, behind every successful athlete stands a mother whose sacrifice, strength and encouragement shapes the journey to greatness. Celebrating this special bond, Special Olympic Bharat honoured the mothers of special athletes in Delhi. Here's a special report by DD India's Narayan Singh.
Like the roots of a giant tree that stay hidden but keep it strong, mothers silently become the biggest support in an athlete's journey. Special Olympic Bharat celebrated Mother's Day in Delhi by honouring the mothers of special athletes for their sacrifice, dedication and unconditional love. The event was attended by President of Special Olympic Bharat, Dr. Mallika Nadda, and other dignitaries. Dr. Mallika Nadda praised the courage of athletes and the tireless efforts of their mothers. She described mothers as the true pillar behind every success story.
It's a great day to honor the mothers, the parents who are tirelessly working with the special children to make them able members of the society. We are grateful to all the mothers who are here with their children, with our athletes, and continuously supporting them, helping them to develop the talents which are inherent in these children.
So, these athletes would not be what they are if the mother was not devoted to them. And it is actually the mother's hard work and her patience that encourages these children to come forward. Or it's not just about athletes, The aim is, जैसे हम लोगों ने किया है, कि we give them an opportunity to work. Now, all these children, they need to have a dignity of life.
India's special athletes have won record number of medals at several international events. Behind these achievements are mothers who stood by their children through every challenge. The main aim of the program was to recognize their role in shaping successful athletes and confident individuals.
मेरे लिए श्रेय हमेशा से नॉर्मल रहा क्योंकि उसका एक ही प्रॉब्लम था कि थोड़ा स्पीच लेट था, अदरवाइज ही इज़ अ हीरो मेरी फैमिली के लिए, अपने स्कूल के लिए, अपने देश के लिए.
The celebration became even more special with colorful cultural performances by children. The young performers showcased their talent through dance and music. Their confidence, energy, and joyful expressions won the hearts of everyone present. The event turned into an emotional tribute to mothers who continue to inspire their children every day. It also highlighted how sports empower special athletes and help them shine on the global stage. Naran Singh Sport for DD India, Delhi.
Let us know your thoughts on the news of the day. For those on the go, you can get all the latest news and updates from India and across the world on DD India mobile app. This app is available on both Android and iOS platforms. You can scan this QR code on the screen to download now. We'll be back with more news as it breaks here on DD India. I'm Shubhendu Ghosh from all of us here in Delhi. Thanks for watching DD India News Hour.